if you're listening, you're in the presence of the very first Classic Rock Rundown, and we're going to be celebrating the 40th anniversary of Van Halen Women and Children First.
Introductions, please.
I couldn't have picked a better two-man panel to help me launch this particular format for the show. Two guys that I hold in high esteem. And up first, I've got one of the few human beings on the planet who has had the privilege of playing for two original Kiss members. And I'll introduce him as the powerful and attractive Jeremy Asbrock, currently of Ace Frehley. How you doing today, Jeremy?
I'm doing good. Thanks for that, Aaron.
and on the other end, a lot of guys in Massachusetts, they like to show their gold off on their fingers in the form of Super Bowl championships. This guy, he prefers to hang his gold on the wall in the shape of records. I'm talking about Michael Sweet. How you doing today, Michael?
Yeah, hey, buddy. I don't have any gold on my fingers, man. Believe it or not, no gold. But I got a few gold albums on the wall, and I'm very humbled and appreciative of that. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I had to make sure and point that out that you prefer yours in the shape of records. We just leave the sports out of it, man. We just hang those things on the wall. But so in talking about, but I'm very excited to have you guys, and there's a very good reason I asked the two of you to be here today, and that's because you're both Major League Van Halen fans, and I know that about you, and in having talked with you before, and just ran into Michael a couple different times and talked with him before, and of course talking with Jeremy previously. But to set the stage here.
Set the stage.
And with Women and Children First, I'll start with just a general setup. To me, one of the interesting things is that, and I don't know how many of the Roth-era albums were recorded at Sunset Sound. I do know that Women and Children First was one of them, and recorded from December of 79 to February of 80. So it was made relatively quickly, which I think could be a part of what shaped the album in the way that it turned out. Of course, produced by Ted Templeman, Don Landee heading up engineering, released March 26, 1980, ultimately certified 3 times platinum, just like just like its predecessor, Van Halen 2. The album peaked at number 6 on US Billboard 200. The single, of course, was "And the Cradle Will Rock," peaked at number 55 on the Billboard Hot 100. And the album has, I think if you look at critics' comments and if you look at previous reviews that are sort of out there that you can go and find, the best way that I could summarize it is that a lot of those reviews and a lot of those critics seem to have found this album as showing a maturing Van Halen. And we'll talk about what you guys think about that. We'll touch on that some more. Album clocks in at 33 minutes, 35 seconds. Chronologically falls between, and I think that's one of the great things about it. 33 minutes, 35 seconds. I mean, it's mind blowing to look back at some of these albums and the time that they actually had, for you to get from front to back. Falls between Van Halen 2 in 1979 and Fair Warning in 1981 chronologically.
Track list.
And the Cradle Will Rock. Everybody Wants Some. Fools. Romeo Delight. Tora Tora. Loss of Control. Take Your Whiskey Home. Could This Be Magic? And closing us out in a simple rhyme with a partial instrumental called Growth at the close of the track and album, and maybe one of the heaviest little snippets of things I recall hearing in the Roth era for myself. So open floor, man. Anybody got any opening comments about Women and Children First before we get into the rundown?
The Rockers Forum.
Michael, you first.
Well, I'll tell you, it's funny for me anyway. Everybody has a different story or memory when it comes to Van Halen or any band that they love for that matter. But I've got into some not really heated debates, but certainly debates over Women and Children. And there's the group of people that love that album, and there's the group of people that don't like it certainly as much as 1 and 2. And, it's funny because I like it equally as much as 1 and 2. It is very different. The comment you made earlier about some people saying it's a more mature Van Halen, more mature sound. I don't know if I agree with that. I think it's a little, I'd use the word polished, maybe a little more polished. The Van Halen 1 was more raw and just on fire and just almost as if they're up on a stage just going for it. Women and Children, to me, might be a little bit more thought out. But, you know, I don't know if I use the term more mature, but man, it's a great album. Definitely, I listened to that album and wore that album out, as I did with 1 and 2, and Fair Warning, of course, which is another favorite of mine. I'm more of a Roth-era Van Halen, I'll be honest. You know, I just personally believe that they had a little extra gas in the tank, you know, a little more fire. And there was a certain type of energy that they brought to the table, man, with the Roth-era songs and albums and shows that made me a diehard fan. You know, as much as I respect Hagar, I never really, to the degree that I got into Van Halen with Roth, I never really got into the Van Halen version with Hagar, personally speaking. But that being said, Women and Children, what can you say about it? Just a killer, legendary album.
And I agree with Michael. I'm more of a Roth guy than a Sammy guy. I love Sammy Van Halen too, but I don't know if it's so much maturity, but they were definitely a lot more versatile. You could hear all of these different musical influences that were in a blender versus Sam, where it was just kind of straight ahead commercial rock. And in revisiting Women and Children, I noticed how loose it is. It's super, super loose. Like there's a couple spots where I guess if they weren't making the album so fast, Ted would have said, hold on, let's cut that again. That was a little bit off there. I think Van Halen 1 was a lot tighter, you know, and I definitely agree that they had a lot more gas. There's a lot of energy.
Yeah.
I still don't know if I'd say mature because, you know, some of that other stuff is pretty mature for such youthful rock and roll.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
I liked what you said though about, you know, there was a lot of diversity, and I think David brought a lot of that to the table.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Because, you know, David was an R&B / disco / whatever kind of guy, bringing that into, you know, what the Van Halen boys were into. And I think it made for this eclectic mix, which really worked.
Yeah. And the Van Halen's dad, you know, he was a big band guy. So I know they're bringing elements of that, you know, they were pretty versatile because of their dad as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No question about it. And not that Sammy didn't bring that, you know, Sammy obviously had his own thing and his own style, but yeah, it was just a much different Van Halen with Sammy, much more commercial. And as some might say, corporate, you know, more of that radio friendly, commercial, straight ahead kind of stuff, which is fine, you know. But that's not what did it for me, man. I love the fire. I love the just, whoa, what is this? You know, kind of thing. That's what sealed the deal for me.
Well, I tell you, so I love where we're going already because you guys are already disagreeing with reviews and critics, and that makes me love what we're doing even more. So, but I think that's you know, let me point out a couple of things that I saw referenced, and we'll get into a couple of specific things in the rundown. But I wanted to say, so on one, and I believe this was Rolling Stone. Don't hold me to that, but I'm pretty sure this was Rolling Stone, and I don't have the quotes in front of me, but I know that one was. It quoted, I believe, 3 songs off the album as high volume works of art. I don't remember the first 2 songs, but I do remember Loss of Control was one of the songs. And that surprised me coming from Rolling Stone.
Yeah, that is a surprise, to be honest, because you don't typically see that at Rolling Stone in terms of, you know, rock / metal bands in words like that. So that's crazy. Yeah.
And then so just in the other, as far as the maturity thing, I noticed that it said, let's see if I can find one of them. One was from, and I apologize, I don't have the guy's name in front of me, but I did write this one quote down. The record where the group started to get heavier, both sonically and to a lesser extent thematically. So that one particular one, that one particular review rather was talking about the intensifying, I guess, of the sonics first and foremost, which I gotta say, you know, the one thing that I will point out, just as far as an open floor comment, I would say, although admittedly, And the Cradle Will Rock, not my favorite Van Halen song, but as far as an opening to an album, it would be hard for me to argue that anything else on there could have been a better opening track. I mean, it's very, it's very Van Halen-esque. And when I hear that, it puts me in the mindset of an Unchained or something like that. I think it's also pretty incredible that the I believe it's a Wurlitzer that Eddie's playing in there. They ran, of course, through a Marshall 100-watt plexi, I believe. And
right.
So just pretty fascinating stuff in terms of production.
Yeah, it took a long time before I realized that was an electric piano because, to my young ears, when I first got the album, it just sounded like a guitar to me.
Absolutely.
So when I was revisiting the album before this interview, I noticed that when they get to the solo section, all that distortion disappears and it's just a clean electric piano.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of neat.
It is neat. And, Van Halen was definitely, and I don't think at the time people thought this or knew this, but they were very innovative, especially in particular Eddie, obviously.
Yeah.
In terms of tone and experimentation and trying different things to achieve different sounds. Very, very innovative. And that helped create that sound, man, that they had, which was very unique and one of a kind. So when you hear Van Halen, man, instantaneous before one note is sung, it's Van Halen.
Absolutely.
And that's what I always loved about it. It was just, they had their own thing and it was so cool.
Yeah. You can even hear the drums, like the sound of the drums. And that's Alex Van Halen. I can tell by the sound of the drums.
Absolutely. Yeah. His snare and his cymbals, instantaneous. It's like he had his own thing, his own sound, unlike anyone else, especially at the time, and especially in the cymbal, hi-hats and cymbal department. Just this incredible brilliance, but not overwhelming. It was just incredible.
Yeah, and I think that's an astute point, Michael. And I think too, in terms of his drums, one of the things being a kid, a really little kid before I really got into Van Halen, but even being a child and what exposure I would have to videos, seeing that those gigantic sets and something about the toms always grabbed me too, like that mid-range pop of the toms always kind of, maybe I'm describing that good or not so good, but you probably get what I'm saying.
No, absolutely. And I mean, you go back to 1 and 2 and those were 1 and 2 and possibly even Women and Children. Those were real toms. Eventually he started getting into rototoms and then Simmons toms and a whole different sound. But he was always very creative in his drum tones, man. Now, whether that was Alex, I'm assuming it was Alex. And then, you've got to give credit where credit is due as well to the engineer and the producer. I'm sure they brought a lot to the table in that regard as well.
I don't want to get too far off topic, but while we're on this, let me ask both of you guys, in terms of, because it's pretty much here, we're all predominantly a Roth crowd. Do you think that one of the things that made it more difficult to find Roth-era Van Halen sort of as digestible as we did with Roth was that drum sound as it became, real cymbals, but electronic toms? Was that one of the things that ever jumped? Because with me, I'll just say for myself personally, going back and listening to 5150, if there's anything that kind of, and Michael, I've heard you talk before about how Robert has trouble with To Hell with the Devil because of gated cymbals, listening to it. And so I can hear that in the toms for me. It makes it a little tougher for me to listen to.
Well, yeah, it's possible. I mean, I don't know if that's to a large degree, maybe a small degree, but I would say, yeah, that's possible. Because like you mentioned, To Hell with the Devil, I mean, I can't listen to it. The song where the cymbals were accidentally gated. How that was accidental, I have no clue. But,
I actually wanted to ask you that.
Yeah, apparently we all missed that especially like on sing-along song. You literally hear it. It sounds like he's choking every cymbal, but they were gated. And, I can't even listen to it because of that. But I could see how something like that would definitely, affect the listener in a positive and or negative way, for sure.
I think that's only if you're listening to it in retrospect, because like, I don't know. I guess when I hear it, I don't know if it's nostalgia or if it's because the songs are good. Like, if you want to use To Hell with the Devil as an example, Michael, I got that for Christmas the year it came out. I didn't notice anything like that. I just loved the songs and listened to the music, and I can listen to it now and hear what I heard then. I mean, I don't know. I guess,
and that's awesome.
You can get nitpicky about it, but I don't think your average listener is going to nitpick stuff like that.
I think you're right. You're absolutely right, and thank God. Thank God. That's awesome, because if that were the case, if they did nitpick, we probably wouldn't have bought as many albums as we bought in the past,
Yeah, absolutely.
Because there's out of tune chords and out of tune vocals and all kinds of things going on. But that's part of what makes it special.
And like 5150 didn't age as well sonically, but man, I can still listen to it and feel those feelings I felt when I bought it when it was a brand new record. I can hear those toms and go, yeah, the Simmons toms. Yeah, those sound kind of jive. But
you know why, Jeremy? I think, this is my opinion, because I think at the end of the day, it always comes down to the song.
Yes, I agree.
That's the foundation. Like you're building a house and you pour the foundation, and you either have a good foundation or a bad foundation. And if you don't have a good song, you're basically trying to build upon, sand. Right. And it doesn't really matter. But if you have a really great song, again, it doesn't really matter because the song speaks for itself. So who cares if there's choke cymbals, or who cares if there's out of tune note here or there? The song is what's pulling people in and touching their hearts.
Absolutely. Well, we've definitely, I agree. I agree with that as well. And I'll add a perspective on that for you too, Michael, at some point. I've got an interesting thing I can add there, but just to get into the rundown. So we'll step into some specifics, and I'll call out the order.
The rundown.
First or earliest memories of Women and Children first. And Michael, you can kick us off.
Oh man. Well, my earliest and first memories would be going to the beach. I used to go to the beach a lot. I'd catch the bus down Beach Boulevard from where I lived, which was in La Mirada, and I'd head down to the bus stop, and my buddy and I would catch the bus down, and we'd go down to Seal Beach or Huntington Beach and boogie board and surf, and that would always be a beach favorite, always. Cranking Van Halen, and it wasn't just Women and Children, but it was 1 and 2, Women and Children. Eventually, probably around 1982 into 83, I stopped going to the beach because I got so caught up in music. But I just remember those amazing days of, 75 or 80 degree day on the beach, listening to Van Halen.
Yeah.
And just like looking at each other, my buddy and I, or if we were there with our girlfriends, just hanging out going, this is freaking awesome, isn't it? And Van Halen was always the soundtrack to that.
Jeremy, how about you?
Discovering FM radio. I got into Van Halen right when 1984 came out, and I was 8 years old, and I'd gotten a boombox that Christmas, and that was when I discovered 103 KDF, Nashville's rock and roll station.
Nice.
And Van Halen was coming to town 2 months later. So whenever they would play a Van Halen song, if you were the ninth caller, you'd win tickets. And I just remember dialing 737 ROCK over and over, and like trying to win tickets with a rotary phone. My God. So
did you win tickets?
No, I didn't win tickets. They weren't just playing 1984. They were playing, all the stuff. And I remember, and the Cradle Will Rock was one that was in regular rotation. And early Van Halen just reminds me of discovering rock radio.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome, man.
We'll touch some more on the tracks from Women and Children first in just a bit. I'll say for me, just to close this part out, I will say for myself, paying my way through school, I actually worked at Camelot Music, which became FYE. And at that point, I had the entire Van Halen catalog with the exception of Women and Children First and Diver Down. And I went and bought Women and Children First, and just remember listening through that album, thinking, where did I miss this album? And why do I not have this in my collection? Like, where did I go wrong? And how did I overlook this? Because this is incredible. And very quickly forming off of that album, probably 4 or 5 songs that are just some of my favorite Van Halen songs. I mean, if I was going to make the ultimate Van Halen playlist, they would be on there. And, so that's my personal recollection of that. So when you look at the Roth-era body of work, of Van Halen work, how do you see the album's place in that collection? And it doesn't have to be a stack ranking, but just kind of the overall vibe and the overall fit of Women and Children First in those 6 albums. And Jeremy, if you would kick us off on that one.
I am by no means comparing Van Halen and the Beatles, but to me, those first 6 albums are equal to each other. They all have the same place in my heart. They've all been my favorite at one point or another. I don't really think one is better than, it's like trying to pick your favorite chapter out of a book.
Yeah.
So I don't really rank, because is Van Halen 1 better than this? Yeah, it's fantastic, but I love Fair Warning as much as I love 1, and I love
absolutely
even 1980. And man, a lot of people are down on Diver Down, but man, I love Diver Down.
Yeah, yeah.
Just because it covers what we could have a world without Diver Down, like that. Well, no, I'd rather have Diver Down.
Yeah,
I don't know. They're,
absolutely.
They're all kind of the same to me. They're all fantastic.
I agree with you, man, 100%. And not to take the easy way out, but exactly what Jeremy said. You just can't pick a favorite, or at least I can't. I love them all and respect them all equally. Yeah. They're all very different. The 2 that are the most alike is 1 and 2, obviously.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Those are most alike.
I think that's because Van Halen 2 was also part of their set when they were a club band. So it was just
right.
Definitely
kind of what they had left.
Absolutely. And that being said, I love Diver Down. I remember going to party after party and that being the soundtrack and cranking that up, and loving it. Yeah, it was mostly covers, but it done really well. And a quick funny story that I forgot to mention earlier, in 1982, I went to the Troubadour, and I was hanging out, me and my buddy Greg Raumeyer, and the place was packed, absolutely packed. And I see what looked to be David Lee Roth sitting at the bar. So I walked over to him, and sure enough, it was David Lee Roth. And I didn't ask him for an autograph. I offered to buy him a beer, and he accepted. I bought him a beer. And I said, "Nice to meet you. I just wanted to say hi." And he said, "Nice to meet you as well." And I went about my business. And me and my buddy Greg, being the fanboys that we were in the corner like, "Oh, man, oh, my God," freaking out. And we watched David Lee Roth about a half hour later walk out the door and get on a bicycle. Okay, not a motorcycle, not a car, but a bicycle and ride away. And I just thought that was wild, man. So obviously he lived nearby to just ride his bike down to the Troubadour. It was pretty funny.
Yeah. Well, I'll try to follow that for myself, but I will clarify first. I do own Diver Down now. I was about 19 years old at the time, and if you go back and listen to my conversation with Greg Renoff about the book Van Halen Rising, admittedly, I was a late bloomer on Van Halen, just being that I got way into music at about 8 years old and didn't fall deep into Van Halen until I was about 14, 15. So,
that was when you fell into Van Halen and got into them. That was Sammy era Van Halen, right? It
was during the Sammy era, but I did like balance. I enjoyed the Sammy stuff, no doubt. But one of the things that happened was, as I was 16, so it was not too long after I kind of discovered Van Halen, my girlfriend at the time actually bought me the best of. So it was when Dave came back and did what Me Wise Magic and Can't Get This Stuff No More on the best of. I got that. And right on the dime, I took my McDonald's money and went to the mall and picked up, whatever I could get or thought I needed. And from that point, I've swung in favor of the Roth-era for myself. So, but I did pick up Diver Down, and I'm just, I would agree with you guys as well that they all are uniquely different. And I think that at the end of the day, you could make the conversation that is what separated Van Halen from a lot of other bands, is they were one of those bands that had, true development throughout their career, and for me, I'll say for Women and Children First, the way that I would see that in those 6 albums in the Roth-era portion of the catalog, I would really see it as being the one where some different, just maybe Michael said earlier, either different or more versatile. And I think I would say the same thing. You hear a lot of some acoustic stuff in there that I don't know that you heard as much, maybe except for Spanish Fly or something on Van Halen 2.
Yep.
But I would note that stuff. That was exciting to hear, because just to hear Eddie doing his thing on acoustic, but also for me, this was the album where Michael Anthony got to showcase what he was capable of. And I think this album is a real good, told you so to all the people who have dogged Michael Anthony for a lot of years about his abilities. And, in my opinion, he has been criminally underrated his entire career. And I think he was equally responsible for the sound of Van Halen as the other guys. And so I think for me personally, this is an album where I can put it on and hear a lot of special Michael Anthony moments that are not necessarily background vocals.
Right. I gotcha. Jeremy?
I agree. Like I said, I revisited this album before we did this interview, and the bass is definitely louder than it was on the first 2 albums. So you can hear Mike a lot more.
Yeah. Let's jump in and talk about the single. So, and the Cradle Will Rock with the B-side of Everybody Wants Some. And let's just briefly, and I know I'm not a big fan of these kind of questions, but I felt like it was fitting in this particular scenario, being that we're running down the album. Put yourself in the shoes of Warner Brother execs, and would you have made a different move in terms of a single from the album? I mentioned earlier the peak position of the Cradle Will Rock, 55 on the Hot 100. Do you hear another track on the album that might have had more potential in the role of single to promote the album? And I'll kick that one off and just say real quick for myself. I think you could make the argument that there were some other songs in there that could have maybe been more marketable, maybe had some stronger hooks. But I think one of the things is that song obviously had a very unique style of energy. It showcased a different part of Van Halen, being that it was probably the first time we really heard him using keyboards to that extent. And with the energy of it, I compared the beginning of And the Cradle Will Rock to Unchained earlier. And I think just based on that alone, it made for a very good opening track. And I think almost equally, it made for an appropriate single. The B-side, I think Everybody Wants Some could have been a single. And I know for me, you guys were talking about hearing And the Cradle Will Rock on the radio a lot. Up here where I'm at in the tri-state area, Kentucky, Ohio, and West Virginia, Everybody Wants Some has been a radio staple since I don't even know what age, probably, I can remember back to being 12 and 13 years old. Hearing it, not being so into Van Halen, having fallen into Van Halen at the time, but knowing it was a Van Halen song. And on top of that, what was there's the John, I always think of the John Cusack film. Do you remember the name of it? Either of you guys were like
Better Off Dead.
Better Off Dead. Yeah. Like the California Raisins. The California Raisins are playing Everybody Wants Some, and one of the little California Raisins is like wailing on the Frankenstrat and everything. So
it was a little clay hamburger, is what it was.
Oh yeah. That's right. Okay, yeah. So, but that was so. Anyways, that was my take on whether there could be a different single, and I'm not sure at the end of it that I can come to the conclusion that it really matters, because it seems that from everything I read about this album, it only further entrenched Van Halen as a live act. So, Michael, you're up next, buddy.
I think they made the right call, man. I do. And the Cradle Will Rock was a mid-tempo, straight-ahead song that had the energy and fire to it, but yet at the same time, it was a little more commercial, and I keep using the term radio friendly, but it's so true. And you gotta think about the fact that back then there was radio, for bands like Van Halen. Now there's not. You know, if a band came out, a new band came out that sounded like Van Halen, there'd be no radio to play them.
Very, very true. Yeah,
and
absolutely.
You know, so back then the executives and the band and management and everyone involved had to think of everything. You know, you had to think of you know, what's best for radio. They had to think of what's best for the fans. We don't want to release something that's too far out there that, you know, alienates our fan base. We want to make sure that we release something that's going to, you know, grow our fan base and excite people. So there's a lot that goes into account of choosing a first single for any band. Because I only know that because we went through that with every album back then, and it was sometimes a very difficult decision, you know. And sometimes you miss the mark, but hopefully not by too far. But I think they got it right, man. I really do.
Jeremy, what say you?
Man, that was the song that made me want to get the album. I think it sounds like a hit single. It's got a strong chorus. It's got that super melodic solo section. And, you know, that was the perfect way to kick off the album. Honestly, you know, I know you can hear Everybody Wants Some on the radio now, but I just don't think that would have worked on the radio back then because it takes so long for the song to get started.
That's true. Fair point.
Yeah.
That wasn't going to happen in 1980. And, you know, this one like didn't waste any time. You know, it was short and very accessible. And I mean, for me, I was like 9 or 10 when I got the record. And it was because I heard that song on the radio. And I remember how excited I used to get when they played that tune in particular. So, yeah, that was perfect. I can't hear another song on the album being that perfect for the kickoff single.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was a wise choice, and they made the right one for sure. I mean, who knows if they had released another song as the first single? Who knows what would have happened? But they got it right, man, for sure. I mean, I loved it. I heard it as a big Van Halen fan at the time. I heard it. I didn't once think, you know, man, they should have picked a different song. I didn't think that or say that once.
Well, and like I said earlier, I didn't even realize that was a keyboard until, you know, way later. It just sounded like a guitar to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's, you know, it's hard to argue. It's hard to argue triple platinum, right? I mean,
well, exactly.
Even in 1980. So
exactly.
Next up. So, and last part of the rundown, what role do you see Women and Children First playing in Van Halen progressing as one of the biggest bands on the planet at that point, you know, circa 1980? And Michael, you lead us off on that one.
Oh man, I think it was such an important piece of the puzzle, and it came at the right time. It's equally as powerful as 1 and 2. It made a statement. It kept the momentum going. There wasn't a pause at all or a hiccup at all with that album. Not in the least bit. So it was perfect for that album to come out at that time and be the third lineup. And I think it worked brilliantly.
Jeremy, how about you, man?
It definitely showed that they weren't a single or a 2 album band, that they had the goods to keep moving.
Yeah. And for myself, I'll just, in a summary of what the both of you said, the word that I had in mind was consistency. You know,
yep.
It had the consistency to prove that while they could continue making that same, it's almost like that AC/DC consistency, but they were evolving and stretching out and doing some things differently. And that's kind of how it jumps out at me. So,
yeah, and with most bands, it doesn't work that way. You know, a lot of bands release an album, their first album, and it's great, and then they release their second album, and it's like, oh man, what happened? You know, or the third album, oh no, you know, the well runs dry, as they say, and you know, with Van Halen, that just didn't happen.
No, never. Not for their whole career. I don't think that ever happened. But thank you guys for indulging us there in the rundown. Let's close this thing out. If you got a couple minutes, let's close this thing out. This we're going to call this part of the rundown at the speed of sound lightning round.
It's the speed of sound lightning round.
And we're gonna start. And I'm gonna give you a heads up because there's 2 questions in here that can seem real similar. And just keep in mind as we get into them, there is a difference between best and personal favorite. So, so we'll start with best track on the album. Jeremy, you kick that off.
Best track on the album. Romeo Delight.
Michael.
Oh man, dude, Jeremy just took my pick, man. Absolutely.
Because then that means it is the best.
Well, it is. It's a brilliant song, and it's so different and so late. It's laid out incredibly well. I would play that song over and over and over
Me
again,
too.
much more than any other song on the album.
All right.
So that has to mean something.
All right. So Michael is also Romeo Delight. We're gonna make this thing a hat trick. I'm gonna say Romeo Delight. All right. Up next, personal favorite track on the album. I start this one, and I'm gonna say "Take Your Whiskey Home." Michael.
Oh, dude, man, gosh, that's a tough one. It really depends on what mood I'm in. If I'm in a more like, swampy, like edgy kind of mood, I'm going with "Take Your Whiskey Home" as well. I mean, that's one that I used to play a lot as well in the car. I'd crank that one up. I'd go one notch louder on that one. Just that guitar, that guitar riff, man, was just so cool. So I'm gonna steal your line, man.
No problem, Jeremy.
This is an easy Fools for me. That quarter note shuffle, Fools was always probably my go-to on the album.
Great song.
That was the one like where he finally like Dave's a blues man. Listen to that intro.
That's right.
Man.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jeremy, we're doing lightning round, but remind me later. I want to tell you a story about that. So album MVP, Eddie, Alex, Michael, or Dave?
Oh, gosh.
And Michael, you're up first.
Well, everything you said about Michael Anthony earlier makes me want to say Michael Anthony. And, I would say Michael anyway. I went as far as to say somewhat recently in a post online that I think he's probably the most underrated rock player of all time. And not only that, but he's probably my favorite rock player of all time.
Yeah.
I actually reached out to him to play on my last solo album, and it almost happened.
Oh, wow.
I love Michael. I love his groove. And he's such an incredibly solid bass player in terms of that just eighth note, lay down the pocket groove. And then everybody knows what an amazing singer he is as well. So, I'll go ahead and give it to Michael.
No doubt. Jeremy.
Ed was already established as sort of the MVP guitar player, but I really think that Dave pulled out some stuff for Women and Children First that was a little different than just being a vocalist prior to that. Like I said, he kind of showed that he was a little bit of a blues man, and, he did it in the intro of "Take Your Whiskey Home" too. Like, I don't know, that whiskey soaked voice really, really made an appearance on this record. And then, something like "Loss of Control," like, well, what are you going to do over those verses? I don't know. Yeah. I'll just talk like I'm talking to a walkie-talkie or a CB radio, like I'm in a helicopter or something.
Yeah, lots of control. Yeah, it's like
breaker. I mean, that's pretty inventive. I wouldn't
pretty cool.
That.
No, it's very.
Honestly, I think I'm going to give MPV to Dave on this one. He
you know what, man, dude, I'm with you too. I think that's a good one. I'm giving it to Michael. You give it to David, but I think both are worthy for sure. And Eddie, he doesn't have anything to prove.
Exactly.
But
he's already the star.
Yeah, exactly, and always will be. But I mean, I have been saying lately on social media about David Lee Roth, and man, the guy gets bagged on so often, and it's like he's. In my opinion, so much better than people give him credit for.
Oh, absolutely. 100%.
Does he sound the same? No. But does anybody sound the same? 35 years or 40 years later? No. And I just think that he's such a great singer and has so much character to his voice, and one of the best frontmen, showmen of all time.
Well, that's all astute points, Michael. Thank you for that. I'm going to close this one out, and I'm going to give it to Michael Anthony for reasons that I mentioned earlier. But I will tell you, this is very cool. My answer, I wrote the questions. My answer was going to be two-way tie, Michael Anthony, David Lee Roth. So how cool was that it worked out that way, and we kind of had the same vibe on that.
Nice.
But now I'm getting the big head over here thinking I wrote incredible questions in there. So anyways,
dude, you're so PC, man. You're so PC. You know?
Yeah. Okay, song you skip on Women and Children First. Jeremy, kick us off.
Man, it's only 33-minute album. I don't really skip any of them.
That's fair enough.
When I have the opportunity to listen to an album, I don't really skip anything. I mean, with my current life, touring, having a child, being married, it's very rare that I get to listen to an album anymore. But
yeah,
the cool thing about Van Halen albums is they're so short that you don't have to skip anything.
It's part of the beauty of them. Yeah. I think so. Michael, you go ahead.
I'm not trying again to just take the easy way out, but same thing. There aren't any songs on any Van Halen album, Roth-era, that I skip. That I skip. Now, to be honest, some of the Sammy, Hagar Van Halen era albums, I skip the whole album in some cases. But and I'm not saying that to be mean or cruel or anything.
Oh,
but
sure.
It's okay, Michael. Actually, I don't think that I've ever heard Balance in its entirety, and Van Halen is one of my favorite bands of all time.
Yeah, exactly. But man, I never skipped the Van Halen song. I'd always put the CD in or the album on and listen to the whole thing.
Okay, I will close this one out, and for me, I'm gonna say Loss of Control. No disrespect to the song, just doesn't quite grab me. Parts of it I love, parts of it just kind of
Sure.
So I'll be the odd man out and stand tall in my perspective.
Michael,
not friends anymore, man?
Michael, did you see Nuno do that song with the Atomic Punks on the cruise?
I did not.
I didn't either. I saw the Punks the night before. Out on the pool stage, and then I thought, well, I saw him last night. I'm going to go see some other people, and then Nuno played that song, and he played one other with him too. And I'm like, oh man,
I heard about it, but I did not see Nuno play with the Atomic Punks, at least on that cruise. I did a few cruises back on the beach.
When he was on the beach. Yes. I saw that too.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, so we got the very last question of Speed of Sound Lightning Round. This will wrap up the rundown, and then we will close out and give you guys a chance to let everybody know what's going on with you right now. So last question, rank Women and Children First out of 6 Roth-era Van Halen albums. I will start this one, and I will rank Women and Children First, number 3.
I love it. Man,
Michael, how about you?
I'm going to rank it number 3, man.
Jeremy, how about you?
I rank it chapter 3 of a 6-chapter book.
There you go, man. All right. Good perspective. I'm going to have to call Jeremy sometime this week after this thing's over with and be like, man, so you still like me. Okay. That I said I was, 15 and like Balance, right?
It's all good, man.
I'm playing, dude. I'm playing.
I know you are. I love, don't get me wrong. I listen to a lot of those Sammy songs on the radio and shook my head and tapped my foot,
Oh yeah.
I don't know what it is. I just couldn't get into it as much as I could with those with the Roth-era Van Halen albums. I can't really even explain why, because Sammy's I guess technically a better singer if you want to get down to technical ability and range. But I mean, I don't know what it was. It just, I couldn't do it, man. Weird.
Michael, I want to get into talking about the 1987 tour in just a minute, but I want to so Stryper was at the Cannery Ballroom in Nashville. This was maybe 2 years ago, and I came through to say hi. I was the guy that had on the Eddie Van Halen, the black and yellow striped, Eddie Van Halen. Probably looked kind of cliche being at a Stryper show with that on, if I'm being real honest about myself. But anyways, you and I were talking, and you had asked me, so you a big Van Halen fan? I said, yeah, we were talking, and you said, and I'm paraphrasing, because I wouldn't want to try to quote you, but you were talking about how the first album made such an impact on you because of the time in life, where it fell in your lap and all that stuff. So with me, you know, I'm 70-30 Roth to Hagar. But at the same time, just because of where I was in life, because of the memories it brings up and everything, I have that stuff come along. So it does mean something. I am with Jeremy. I'm not like, I don't think Balance, it was the highlight of that era by any stretch. That was just happened to be what was going on at the time. But, you know,
and I respect that. People that are Sammy Van Halen fans, I respect it.
Oh, sure.
And I get it. I never try to convince them otherwise, you know, because that's just not cool.
Oh, no.
And memories always go along with that. And I think that's what makes people really deep, lifelong fans. It's not just the band and the music, but it's the memories that go along with that time in your life, you know, and it really, it deeply roots everything and the music into your heart, you know?
Absolutely.
But yeah, I just, you know, I'm a Roth guy, man, and I'll say that till I die.
Well, I'll pay Jeremy a compliment and his perspectives, man. One thing I love about hearing Jeremy's take on this is he has so much that I feel like he and I could almost sit down and go tit for tat on what, not that I couldn't with Michael, but I love that when he's given answers to these questions in the rundown, he's going back and thinking about, okay, what memory did that conjure up in me from childhood?
Well, look, man, let me give you one for the Sammy years. Like the 5150 tour I was 11, and that was the first concert I went to without my parents. My older brother took me. The arena was oversold. I'd never been to a sold out concert. I mean, it was so larger than life. And, you know, even then Eddie was my hero because, you know, I was a young guitar player, and that was like, oh my God, it's my hero live in the flesh. And I mean, even to this day, that's still, I'm getting goosebumps talking about it. Like that was such a big experience for me. And, you know, it will always have a big place in my heart.
Well, man, I went and saw my wife at the time, Kyle. She was a makeup artist, and she did the makeup for Van Halen. Their live documentary, and a lot of that was shot in Fresno. They did a show in Fresno, and I got invited out to see them, and I met them all and watched the show and everything. And our front of house guy, Jim Yakubuski, was their front of house guy. Okay, so there were a lot of connections, and our guitar tech, Kevin Dugan, is Michael's guitar tech. So there was a lot of connections, but I went out to the show and saw it and watched it and everything. And even being there and witnessing it, as great as it was, I respected it, but still at the same time, I just I couldn't help but think in my mind, like, man, if only all these people could go back and see the Van Halen that I saw in '81.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
A flare, a special.
There was just no comparison. I mean, as great as they were, what I saw with Sammy is like there was no comparison. It's like, man, different, just a whole different band, you know.
And you know, even for me, and I told you guys a story about my first Van Halen show being on the 3 tour, you know, in 1998. Once the show started and once it got rolling, and by the time it came around to Eddie's guitar solo, and you hear, you know, I don't know how many people were there that night. I'm guessing between 12 and 14,000 people up in Columbus, Ohio. And, you know, you hear the crowd start chanting, Eddie, Eddie. And there's a part of you that just what Jeremy said, I can get goosebumps thinking about that now because it's just such a special moment, regardless of all the details. And then, of course, on the way to the car after the show's over with and everything's kind of died down, your ears are, the wash in your ears is starting to dissipate, and everyone's talking about, they really got to get rid. They got to find a different singer, you know. And then people are starting to be critics all of a sudden. But you can look at those moments and have so much respect for them. Before I wrap up, any final quick comment? I want to make sure to stick to time so you guys will come back, because I'm always afraid if I go over, you're never going to talk to me again. So anything in closing that you guys want to throw in?
Oh, dude. Well, I mean, the only thing I would say is I'm very honored and humbled that you guys would think of me to sit here and have a conversation with you about Van Halen. You know, that's really cool. And thanks for thinking of me. And I've had a blast. It's been great.
Jeremy, how about you?
Well, man, thanks for having me on and having me on with Michael. Because like I said, he's that perfect age to have gotten into Van Halen, and he's a California native. So I knew it was going to have a little bit stronger of a connection to those early years than I would have. I kind of discovered.
Dude, are you saying I'm old? You saying I'm old?
I'm saying you're the perfect age. You want to trade ages? I'll trade with you.
I love it because when I was that same night in Nashville, one of the things I said to Michael is I think I was 38 at the time, maybe, and I was like, "Dude, you've aged so much better than me, and it really bothers me." But listen,
if you saw me right now, I don't know if you'd agree with that, man. I feel like the last few years I've aged 20 years. It's crazy.
Yeah, and
you don't look it.
Yeah, definitely not.
I'm working on that, man. I'm working hard on that. Trying to keep my my youth in one way or another.
I'll go on.
I had my first child at 40, so I'm going to see just how fast I can do this.
Well, hey, man, I'll tell you both, and I'll go on record in front of however many hundreds of people are going to listen to this episode. I'll tell you right now, if they can isolate the hair gene, I'll come to both you guys and see what kind of deal we can work out. But with all that being said, I'm so glad Jeremy got Michael. Thank you, and yeah, you were obviously top of mind for this topic, and Jeremy as well, because Jeremy is going to have an episode coming up, probably going to be a bonus episode the end of the week after this one airs. And I was so disappointed in myself because I feel like I'm usually, well spoken enough, and I have had pneumonia just derailed me for the first part of this year. And it was so hard. Like I just could not get my thoughts together, couldn't pick my words. And I was like, man, Jeremy's never going to want to talk to me again after this, after this discussion tonight. So I'm glad we had it. Was this one? I can already tell this one's going to be a home run. And I'll close this out by saying, I don't know how I'm going to do another classic rock rundown because, I don't know how we're going to top this one. So I'm going to have to think real hard. It's going to have
honestly, Aaron, if you get a bunch of rock and rollers around together to talk about rock and roll albums, it kind of just takes care of itself.
I was going to say, how you top it? You have Jeremy and I and myself on again.
That's how we'll do it, man. We'll do that I will look up the next.
We do a different album, man. Different band. We got to do Skinner. Let's make it Skinner, man. Come on.
Hey, man, I'll come up with whatever I can find all these anniversary dates. I'll blow your mind how much hard facts I can come up with. So hopefully, Jeremy, I hope you had a good time today too, man. Thank you for being here.
Man, had a great time.
And
Thank you.
The best part of my job in doing this is that I get to talk to guys I respect. I get to get their outlook and their perspective, and then by default, I get to share that with hundreds of people that pull these episodes and listen to them and are kind enough to do that.
That's a wrap.